Cameron Menzies stood on the biggest stage in darts, blood pouring from his hand, the crowd booing, and a referee telling him to leave. That moment went viral overnight. Millions watched it, millions judged it, but nobody in professional darts actually picked up the phone and asked if he was okay. Nobody, except one man, and what that man said changed everything. It was December 2025. Alexandra Palace, the PDC World Darts Championship, one of the most electric venues in all of sport, packed with thousands of fans dressed in costumes, singing, chanting, and ready to watch the best darts players on the planet compete for glory. Cameron Menzies had been here before. The year before, he lost in the first round to Leonard Gates and broke down in tears on stage. That moment was painful. But what happened in December 2025 was something the darts world had never seen before. Menzies was drawn against Charlie Manby, a 20-year-old debutante, a bricklayer from Huddersfield who had never played on a stage this big in his life. On paper, Menzies should have handled it. He is a seasoned professional, a man who has reached major quarterfinals at the Grand Slam of Darts and the World Grand Prix. This was supposed to be a routine first-round win. It was anything but routine. Menzies took the first set, then went 2-1 up. He was in control. The match was his to win, and then everything unraveled. Manby fought back. He took the fourth set in a decider. Suddenly it was 2-2, one set each for everything. The crowd, which had been chanting "Scotland get battered" everywhere they go throughout the match, got louder. Menzies could feel it. The pressure was crushing him. Then Manby hit double one. The match was over. Manby, a 20-year-old debutante, had just knocked out one of Scotland's most experienced darts players on the biggest stage in the sport. What happened next shocked the entire darts world. Menzies turned to the table beside him and punched the underside of it. Not once, not twice, 3 times hard. The water bottles fell off the table. Blood appeared on his right hand almost immediately. Referee Kirk Bevins stepped in and told him to leave the stage. Menzies walked off, holding his bloodied hand up to the crowd as if trying to apologize with a gesture because words would not come. The cameras caught everything. The internet exploded within minutes. Millions of people watched the clip, and the verdict from the outside world was swift and brutal. He lost the plot. He embarrassed the sport. He had to be punished. But here is what nobody was talking about. Here is what the cameras did not show. What was actually going on inside Cameron Menzies in the weeks before that moment. His uncle Gary had recently passed away. Menzies had seen him just 4 days before he died. He said Gary gave him a look in those final days that told him exactly how much he cared. A look that needed no words. And here is the part that makes the story even harder to process. Had Menzies won that first-round match against Manby, his second-round match would have fallen on the exact day of Gary's funeral. He knew that going into the game. He was carrying that weight on stage at Alexandra Palace while thousands of people sang and chanted around him. He said in his statement after the incident, "It is not an excuse, but I have had a lot of things on my mind recently, and I suppose it all just became too much at the end." That was the understatement of the year. Because the damage Menzies did to his hand that night was not just a cut. It was not just a bruise he could ice and recover from in a week. The injury was serious enough to require surgery. Doctors told him he was lucky he had not severed any nerves or tendons. They had just been battered and bruised badly enough that Menzies lost all feeling in his fingers. For 6 weeks after the incident, he could not throw a single dart. He described waking up after surgery with a breathing tube. His words were simple and straight. "I was stupid, I have to deal with that." And then slowly came the mental collapse that followed. Menzies was not just recovering from a hand injury. He was recovering from a public humiliation on one of sport's biggest stages. He was grieving his uncle. He was barely averaging over 75 in the early months of 2026, a number that for a player of his level was alarming. There were days when he thought about not coming back at all. Here is where the story takes a turn that nobody expected. After everything that happened at Alexandra Palace, after the viral clip, after the surgery, after the grief and the mental struggle, Cameron Menzies looked around the professional darts world and found something that hit him harder than the hand injury. Silence. Not a single darts player reached out and genuinely asked how he was doing. Not one. There were the polite throwaway questions that people ask Bicao. See, they feel like they should. The "you alright mate" that gets a nod and moves on, but nobody actually stopped. Nobody actually looked him in the eyes and meant it. Keep that in mind, because what comes next is the part of this story that broke the darts internet. Earlier in 2026, before the Poland Darts Open, Menzies played an exhibition in Twickenham, London. James Wade was there, former world champion. A man who has his own well-documented personal battles throughout his career. A man who knows what it feels like when life does not go the way it should. Wade pulled Menzies aside during that exhibition. and he asked him something that no one else in the sport had bothered to ask. He said, "I do not want your fake answer. How do you actually feel?" And then he did something even more powerful. He shook Menzies by the hand, looked him directly in the eyes and asked, "Is everything okay?" Menzies said it was the first time in months that anyone had genuinely meant those words. Not as a greeting, not as a professional obligation, as a real question from one human being to another. Menzies later spoke about it openly. He has his own issues and he knows more than anybody else what life can do. He was the first person that actually meant it. Wade's own history made that moment carry even more weight. He has spoken publicly throughout his career about personal struggles. He knew the signs, he knew how to ask the right question, and he knew when someone needed to hear that question asked with honesty. That conversation did not fix everything, but it was the moment the recovery actually started. February 2026, Krakow, Poland, the inaugural Poland Darts Open. Cameron Menzies walked onto a darts stage for the first time since Alexandra Palace. He had almost pulled out of the tournament entirely. He admitted he was not enjoying darts anymore, that the love had gone, that he was showing up out of habit rather than hunger. His first match was against Richie Edhouse. He won 6-4, and in his post-match interview he showed the camera the scar on his hand from the surgery. He showed it without flinching. He said, "I have still got a long way to go, but good to play half-decent again." Then came round two. James Wade, the man who had asked him the one question that mattered, the man who had looked him in the eyes when the rest of the sport looked away. Menzies averaged 99, he won 6-0, a whitewash, one of the most convincing performances of the entire round. And when that winning dart went in, the two men shared a moment on stage that meant far more than any scoreline could capture. Menzies tried to give Wade a cuddle right there on the stage. Wade responded by punching him in the chest. Menzies laughed and said later, he does not like cuddles. But the moment was real, the gratitude was real, the comeback was real. Cameron Menzies punched a table at Alexandra Palace and the world called him a disgrace. But the full story is not about a meltdown on a stage. It is about a man who was carrying grief, pain, and pressure that nobody around him took the time to notice. One player noticed, one player asked the real question, and one player helped bring Cameron Menzies back from the edge of walking away from the sport entirely. He still has the scar, he still has no feeling on one side of his fingers, he still has a long road ahead in his recovery, but he is back, he is competing, and he is speaking.